All right, so Mark Ruffalo is back at it again, and this time I think I actually believe in Homeboy. I believe what Homeboy is saying here. He said recently in an interview that the MCU has lost their mystique, and he specifically explains why. He said, I think the expansion into streaming was really exciting, but the thing about Marvel movies is that you had to wait 3 years, and that created a mystique. And I don't think he's wrong. I actually think that he's spot on. Now, the 3 years thing, I don't think that that's entirely true. I think it's usually about, it was like a movie every year or a movie every other year, but it was only like 2 movies a year, or sometimes just 1 movie a year that they had. And the point here is that the MCU, man, prior to the streaming expansion, there was this like longing. There was this anticipation. There was the wanting, the missing of Marvel content. But now it's coming out so frequently that you don't really kind of have that same anticipation anymore. I remember my wife used to also have that same anticipation, but now that I'm home every single day, it's not quite the same thing. All right, let's move on. But the point is that they definitely have been releasing a lot of content. And there's a stat that I'm going to talk about here that just really shows exactly what he's talking about and why we say it. So in the first like 11 years of the MCU, phase 1 through 3, right, starting off with Iron Man, there were only 21 titles, 21 movies that they created. And one of those movies was the Hulk movie that they just recently adopted into the MCU. So technically that wasn't necessarily an original MCU film. But then if you look at the last few years, the last 5 years, remember we just talked about 11 years, 21 movie titles. The last 5 years, there have been a total, I counted it, there've been a total here. This is a great list that shows WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Black Widow, Loki, all that stuff, right? There has been a total now of 24 projects that they've created in the MCU since Avengers Endgame. So the last 5 years, that's basically the same amount that they did and more, right, in the first 3 phases. Now, technically, only 10 of those are movies, right? So they're still kind of following the same movie slate of maybe 1 every year, 2 a year or something like that, 1 every other year or so. But then they've added these 12 series, right? And there's been some one-offs too. There's like Werewolf by Night, which was, that thing was fire. And then you also had the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. And Groot, actually, I forgot about Groot. There's a mini series for Groot, so that probably is actually 25 projects now when you add it all up. And there's some other ones that are coming out right this year. There's gonna be the Deadpool movie, which, man, I'm anticipating that like crazy. There is going to be, of course, the X-Men 97 stuff. And I think that was it Agatha that was also mentioned as well. But the point is that there's been so much content to digest recently, and that has been the reason why I think that people don't really have that this long in an expectation. And a prime example is sometimes they kill their own content, right? Is that, look at the Loki season. The end of the Loki season 2 was amazing. That finale episode, fire. Oh my goodness. Everybody's talking about Loki, the god of stories. What's going on with Kang? Is Kang still actually a threat? Who was that little boy that they were talking about? Loki, now the sacrifice that he's made. Has his sacrifice actually was his sacrifice bigger than Iron Man's sacrifice was in Endgame? There were so many talks about that. And then Marvel just came in and swooped in and just killed that thing by releasing the Marvels on the exact same day that the Loki season finale happened. And that's the type of stuff that we're talking about. That mystique and everything like that is being killed because they're releasing the content too close together and not giving people enough time to like really bask in the glory of Loki. Like, Loki was amazing, right? But they didn't give us the opportunity to really bask in that. Instead, the conversation shifted to this, anti-woke backlash for the Marvels, and people saying that if you didn't like the Marvels, then you just don't like women, and you don't like women-led films. And that's a whole separate rabbit hole that I'm not going to be going down here. I'm not going to do that today. But the thing about it is that they then rushed out right after the Marvels, although the Marvels bombed in the box office, technically by box office, standards, right? They bombed in the box office. Then they rushed out the What If series. Then they rushed out Echo right after that. Instead, we should have just, during that period of time, we should have still been basking in the glory of the Loki series. So, you're just kind of not giving viewers an opportunity here to really kind of be able to digest their content and come up with their theories and do their fandom and all that by releasing this so fast. And part of the issue, I think, the reason why they've released things so quickly and closely together is the fact that they had this pandemic, right? The pandemic happened, that slowed things down a little bit. Then they were the strikes, that slowed things down a little bit. But I'm gonna tell you the real issue, the real reason why they started doing this, is because they got that bag. Marvel got that bag and said, yo, listen, we're going to double down on this. They had 9 movies in the first 11 years that hit $1 billion in the box office. All the Avengers films did well in the box office. They had Iron Man 3 that did over 1.21 billion. They had, which is comical, Captain America Civil War did that, Black Panther 1.3. The funny one to me is the Captain Marvel movie that did $1.1 billion in the box office, because I remember that movie not being that great, but because it was smack dab in the middle of like Infinity War and Endgame, it was able to kind of get that bag, right? They did well because of that movie. But the thing about it is that they were expecting to have that same thing happen, so they started to double down on content. Let's do some more streaming, let's do some more series, let's do some more movies, and they thought that they were going to get the same reception, but then they failed to kind of continue on with having good storytelling. The storytelling started to lag, and then the cohesion of their stories also started to fall off as well. Some of the stuff that just didn't have proper continuity, right? You have Nick Fury in Secret Invasion looking completely different than the Nick Fury that is in the Marvels movie. Then you have the WandaVision series where Wanda looks different, and then what she was in the Multiverse of Madness. There wasn't enough cohesion. And listen now, for the 11 years, there was proper cohesion, right? There was proper, okay, this happened and then this caused this, and we're not seeing that right now in the whole multiverse saga, and that has been sort of kind of what's hurt them. But the bottom line is this, man, is that these are the factors. All of them are factors as to the reason why the MCU is not doing as well as it could be right now. And part of that is that Mystique, it doesn't have that long, it doesn't have that waiting, that anticipation anymore that they used to, because they're releasing things in such close quarters. Now, one of the things that they are doing to kind of fix this, I guess, is that they are now, there's only one movie this year. So the Deadpool movie that's coming out this year. Then we have the X-Men 97, which already has drama, already an X-Men 97 series that's coming out next month, and I think Agatha is supposed to be hitting this year as well, right? But so there's going to be naturally more time to digest the content, especially if the things are good. Then there's going to be more time for people to really kind of just like dive into just the excitement of what that could be. So I think that that's good, and I think that this is something that they should go back to. It's sort of kind of just shortening things, and they're also now introducing showrunners for their TV series, because before they were kind of just shooting these things as like one movie, and that really wasn't working. So I think that things could get better, but I think Mark Ruffalo is right. I think the Mystique is gone right now with the MCU. I completely concur. My friend here, Mark Ruffalo. But speaking of anticipation, one of the things that I am not anticipating anymore is any more Sony Marvel movies. I'm essentially done with them right now, especially after we heard some recent news with the Spider-Man. So check out this next video right here, where I talk about why Madam Web might be the dumbest movie ever. Also, check out our links that are down below in the description here, where you can follow us on social media. Also, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And now until next time, guys, and as always, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic.